Greetings to you. Let's start with a little fairy tale, shall we? It's just imagine that you're walking through the woods, got a bit of a stick, you're walking through the woods, pine forest, enjoying yourself, and you find a bear. And this bear is lying down, half awake, looks a bit mangy, and you're not quite sure what to do, but you're a bit bored, so you poke it with a stick. And you poke it with a stick, and it grumbles and it grunts and it turns over. And it looks to you like the bear's run out of juice, probably doesn't have any teeth, even though perhaps the bear's got a reputation in the old days for being a bit nasty and grumpy. Anyway, you carry on and you poke it and you poke it and you poke it, and suddenly it has got teeth, and suddenly it wakes up and it turns around and it bites off your hand. And you scream and shout, and you scream and shout, it's terribly painful, you've had your hand bitten off and you're terribly affronted, and your friends all turn up then. They were also walking in the wood a little bit behind you, and you say to your friends, this bear attacked me, isn't it a horrible bear? And all your friends say, yeah, it's a terrible bear, what a terrible bear, what a terrible thing to do. Well, you know, we've got another bear, haven't we? The bear's called Russia. It's been around for a very long time, and I'd just now like to talk to you a little bit about the Russian point of view. Now, I'm not suggesting that the Russian point of view is right, particularly what I want to do, because they have closed down any intellectual debate on the situation that's going on at the moment, to tell you the story from a Russian perspective. And it would be the same if you'd stirred up a hornet's nest with a stick and the hornets had flown all over the place and they'd stung you. That doesn't mean to say I'm pro-hornet, or I'm glad that the hornet stung you. What I'm trying to do is explain what happens when you behave in this manner. So let's just have a look at that, shall we? And I'm not the normal golf club bore who we're at the moment hearing too much of, who got his information about Russia largely recently from the Daily Mail, who now feels he knows all about this. But he's made no effort really to look at it in any depth. He watches the BBC, which gives you the party line, or if he's in America, CNN, which give you the establishment line, and the tabloid press. Well, life isn't as simple as that. Now, I was very fortunate years ago to do Professor Connolly's RMAS Soviet Studies course. And he taught us and trained us, it was an external course for the military college at Sandhurst, to actually appreciate what Russians think and their history, to try and understand where the Russians are coming from, or the Russian perspective. And I also was most fortunate later that to study the impact of geopolitical military strategy, which I'm qualified. So, as I say, I'm not the golf club gobshite that we're hearing too much at the moment, or the tabloid journalist. I'm trying to give you an honest assessment of what the situation is. Now, if you go back to the fall of the Soviet Union, which was a good thing, it was politically hostile, and it was matched on our side, the Warsaw Pact, by the NATO countries, which was a defensive organisation of which I was a part for some years. So I know about it, and I was pro-NATO, and it was a great defensive organisation which was extremely successful, no question about it. Now, when the Soviet Union fell, there was a bit of a pact between Gorbachev and the Americans to say, look, okay, it's collapsed. The Warsaw Pact has collapsed. That's gone by the board. Can we have a sort of deal here that you don't expand NATO now that the Warsaw Pact has gone? And of course, as far as I was concerned, I thought we were due for a peace dividend. There's no Warsaw Pact countries anymore. It would be good. It doesn't need to be a NATO. We don't need to spend all this money on armaments and tanks and guns and all the rest of it. We should be a peace dividend. But that didn't suit the Industrial Military Congressional Congress in America. If you've got a £1 trillion a year military budget, you have to have a bogeyman. And I've said this before. And you need, if there isn't a bogeyman, you need to invent one. Now, quite against that agreement, NATO pushed forward its borders. It pushed up through the Baltic, Estonia, Latvia, and across Eastern Europe to Poland and Romania, and so on and so forth. And it pushed right up to the Russian border. And this made the Russians uncomfortable, as you can imagine. And they took much the same kind of view, really, of this as the Americans did in the crisis, the Cuban crisis, which I remember reasonably well. I was a teenager. And JF Kennedy said, I will not have Soviet missiles in Cuba. I will not have Soviet missiles in my backyard. Okay? Now, the Russians feel very much the same way. They feel, just a minute, you've pushed forward and forward and forward, and we're not comfortable about this at all. And we've been seeing it year after year move closer to our borders. And people say, yes, but NATO's defensive. NATO's defensive, but you see, it's not that simple. It's not that simple, as I speak as a retired military man. The situation is not the same. If you are a member of NATO, you can then become a base for NATO troops. So we've seen missile systems move closer to the Russian Federation. And we have seen exercises in the Black Sea, which is their sort of back pond, as it were, by NATO naval forces. It's moving further and further towards the Russian borders, and Russian history likes to have neutral countries around it as what they call buffer states. Now, don't misunderstand me here. I'm not saying this is right or wrong. What I'm saying is look at it from a Russian perspective. They don't see NATO anymore as a defensive posture. They see it as potentially aggressive. And if you move American-made missiles, or you have boots on the ground in Poland, which there is in the Baltic states, the Russians don't see that as defensive. They see that as aggressive. And if you were thinking now as a Russian, you'd probably feel the same way. And you'd feel the same way, let's say, for example, if independence was granted to the Isle of Wight, or indeed we fell out with the Republic of Ireland and the Soviets started to put missiles and boots on the ground in Ireland, or the same situation would have happened with Mexico, for example, in the United States. We wouldn't like it, would we? And the Americans haven't just got cross over Cuba. They didn't want missiles to the backyard. They've done regime changes all over the world. Grenada in their own backyard, Panama, and we've seen regime changes follow that in Libya, Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and all these places. They've advanced. In fact, as I speak and making this recording now, there have been airstrikes on Kabul in Afghanistan and the Yemen and various other places where the Americans are pushing for regime change. So this idea that that somehow the Americans are the guys with the white hats and the Russians are the bad guys it's not as simple as that. So I would counsel you to stop when you're in the pub or you're with friends or even if you're a journalist, trying to pretend this is a black and white issue, because it's not a black and white issue, and you are doing the world a great disservice by pretending that it is. It's the kind of nationalistic rhetoric that we heard in 1914 and no good came of it. It was Serbia, little Serbia's being attacked, or, oh, poor old Belgium, and little Belgium, all that. The problem is, this is how wars start, and they start with public rhetoric stirred up by the tabloid press, and it was just the same in 1914. We're seeing all this happen again, and it's just not worth it. Nobody wins a war, all right? And I said this before, and I've done videos on this before. Nobody actually ever really wins a war. Everybody really loses, and it's a lot of casualties, a lot of people get killed, so on and so forth. So what we need here, and we could make this happen quite easily, is for NATO to agree with Russia that the Ukraine would be a demilitarized zone, and that's something that could calm it down straight away. I'm suspicious when they've closed Russia Today, which is a major national news organisation, which we know is run by the Russians, but no more establishment than the BBC here or CNN in America. Why have they closed down Russia Today? Are we not capable of making our own assessment about what's going on as this ghastly business unfolds? What is it that they're afraid that they might find as the Russians move forward? There's already rumours of biochemical warfare establishments sponsored by America in the Ukraine. Now, we don't know. But I'm very suspicious when we're not allowed to hear from anything other than establishment sources. Establishment sources of what we may or may not know. We're not capable of making our own mind up. Well, we are capable of making our own mind. Let us make our own mind, but let's assess. Let us all assess what these problems are let's do a little bit of homework. All right, before we go down the Russian bogeyman route, because we heard it in Paris, à Berlin, à Berlin. We heard that in Paris in 1914. It'll be over by Christmas. We heard that in this country in 1914, and with the same sort of things were happening in Berlin. No good ever comes from this kind of foghorn diplomacy and ridiculous nationalistic rhetoric. Let's calm down. The answer is to demilitarize completely the Ukraine and get back to some sort of rational discussion and diplomacy before it's too late. Well, greetings to you. As you know, social media was a wonderful invention so that we could all communicate with each other and share our views, and share views that aren't necessarily in line with the establishment, the global establishment, which is run mainly by banks and big pharma. So I've been doing my best to do that, but I am increasingly being shadow banned or taken down, and so are many others. So beware of that, and I will be tagging anything I do in the future with various sources and various channels, so that you will know, well, I've been censored from this, but I've been censored, but you can find it somewhere else. So the whole thing can continue. And I think some of these new channels, which aren't owned by the establishment or influenced by the establishment, banks and big pharma and all the rest, you'll be able to follow the facts. And that doesn't mean fact checkers, of course, which are owned by the establishment. So I just thought I'd give you the heads up on that. And thank you for your sponsorship and your support. I thank you for it. Without you and the information that sometimes you people send me, I couldn't continue. Thank you again. As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research based, and I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I'll automatically share it with you. So, surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much. As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research based, and I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I automatically share it with you. So surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.